Thanks, guys. I think we're all. I think everything's working. Hopefully, Facebook, you can hear what's going on. Those of you that don't know me, I'm Kenny Rumball. I've my fingers in a fair few pies. I'm sure a lot of you know the marine industry. And I'm delighted, Barry, to be back doing a bit of work with UK Sailmakers. Which is actually where I learned to trade. And I suppose just tonight's talk, Howth and Barry asked me to say a few words. I've done a lot of sailing, dinghies, big boats, and went back to it professionally for a couple of years. If I'm totally honest, I don't really do the numbers side of sailing. I kind of fly by the seat of my pants. And with doing so much sailing, I've ended up in situations that you kind of want to be in, but I've also ended up in situations you don't want to be in. So I'm totally open to any questions. I don't hold anything back. I'll tell you the absolute truth on anything that has happened in the offshore fun times and games that I've had. So just feel free. I've put a few pictures together, a few videos together that just shows a little bit of my progression in sailing. One thing I do get asked, especially young guys these days, I get messages on social media and emails and texts, and someone might see me sailing on a big, fast, great looking boat, and someone says, how do you get into that kind of sailing? And the straight answer is it's opportunities, and we've got to put in the hard graft at ground level. So look, there's a few slides there to promote a few questions. That's still for good questions. So feel free to ask questions. That's what it's all about tonight. On anything you want in big boats. Liam's more of a dinghy specialist than I thought I'd ever be. Just to start off, this shot was taken. This was when I was running my second own big boat campaign, where well, you think they're big at the time, and then you get immersed in different worlds. But this is Jedi, which had a full UK sail setup, and this at the start of the Fastnet race in I can't remember what year now, 2016 maybe, 2017, and we just come off houses about here, and we just port tacked the fleet. It was a pin end bias from the start. We just port tacked the entire Cruiser 3 fleet. So that was a nice moment, and we went on to not only win class, but we won the Sailing School Trophy. There were myself, Connor Kinsella, and then basically a crew of Sailing School graduates who signed up to the program in January that year. We trained them up. We taught them how to race offshore, and then we were the first J109 back into Plymouth by like 8 hours, and we were also the lowest rated 109. So that was a little personal highlight, and we were all powered by UK Sails. So there you go. There's the plug. Anyway, so that's me. A few different things going on. Obviously, there's what I've been doing the last few years is the Offshore Racing Academy. We'll talk a little bit about that, and that's really where I'm trying to give back and answer those questions: how to get young guys into offshore racing, and how you get into it, how you step into it. You'll know me from the school, back to maybe UK Sailmakers, obviously, and the league, which I'm happy to ask questions on. If there's any questions on the league, that's this year's project, chewing up a lot of time. So that's me. This video, some of you will love. I noticed Mr. Riley down there back of the room. You'll remember the young 15-year-old Penny from the Texas Oppie days back in 2002. Unfortunately, it's the one video we couldn't get to load up. But it would show you a 15-year-old Penny running around causing mayhem, as I'm sure Mr. Riley can. 100%. I went on a few more years after that. And so, unfortunately, that video is amazing. We'll just click on. And so, look, like anybody, I started off in Oppies. That is 15-year-old Penny in Texas. And then quickly progressed on to, after that, to the 420s. That's myself and Dave Moran. We were the fat boys, and that's us sailing up in the Mumbles in trying to qualify for the Youth Worlds that year, leading the fleet. A couple of well-known guys in the fleet, just drop a few names: Luke Patience, Hannah Mills over in that fleet of 420s. So that was the kind of era of sailing I grew up in. And then because they're in the UK, they get funding, and in Ireland we don't. It's the long and the short of it. And then after that, I did start to do a little bit of coaching. So towing 420s around Europe. And I did a bit of fireballs, sail a lot with this man here in the front, Teddy Vernon fireballs. So anyway, that's where it all started. And then what happened was I finished dinghies. I did a brief stint in a 49er, thought about going to the games, and realized I probably put 8 years of my life to one side. Did I really want to go Olympic sailing for 8 years? Potentially, maybe not. I went sailing fireballs for a couple of years, which was great fun, but I wanted to do something more. And so actually I rang, this is where all the connection comes from. I rang Des McWilliam, and I said, I want to go big boat sailing. And that was where it all started. So I went down and worked for Des in the loft for 6 months, learning how to repair sails, learning how to design sails. There's a slide later on where actually we designed our own fireball sails. But it was Des then kind of got me my first inverted commas professional gig, which was the 2011 Fastnet, ironically, which was on a J109, not a very good one. And anyway, then it spanned on from there. So over the years, I've done Fastnets. I've been lucky enough to go down and do quite a number of Sydney Hobarts. I've sailed the middle sea race around Sicily. I think I've lost count. I think it's 11 or 12 times. And done a few around Ireland's Caribbean 600s. And then, as you know, the last few years in the Figaro Circuit. So doing quite a lot of the standard Rourke races, which are great. It's interesting to the last Fastnet where we finished in Cherbourg as opposed to Plymouth. So it's interesting. Everybody's thinking about doing the Fastnet this year. I can share a lot of the information. The tides around Cherbourg, we were when we were first over the line, but I mean the infraction of yellow brick. That's another story. Anyways, so looking over the years, lots of different teams. I've had a lot of highlights. This photo up here was X-Pac. Actually, Shane Dibney was there as well. He's on the crew. That was one of the boats a lot of middle seas on. We won the middle sea one, or so we didn't win the middle sea. We were third one year. That was the best result we ever got. Were we second? I remember second or third. And it was the year a storm came in. And when I say we had 55 knots, I mean we had 55 knots sea. And there were 10 guys were paid to sail on the boat that year. And there were 10 lads snuggling one another for warmth on the last leg home. It was that cold, wet, and miserable. So that was one of the highlights. One of the highlights was ironically bringing my dad out for a spin. A lot of you know my dad, Alistair. Unfortunately, we can't drag him sailing. But this is him actually. We brought him out for a sail on just before the night before Sydney Hobart. I forgot to check instruments, so that was a highlight. And one of my highlights actually was the 70-20. Once again, started with UK Sailmakers, where a number of years ago, well, a long time ago now, when my dad and my uncle were buying 70-20s for the school to teach courses on, and a young 19-year-old Kenny Rumball sticks his hand up and says, well, I'll be having one of those. And he turns around and he says, you think I'm paying for you to drive in the Jeep and spend lots of money driving around Europe with your 720, you've got another thing coming. And then I actually went out and bought a boat and hid it from them, my own one. And then we came out here to Howth. And another kind of highlight was I never sailed 70-20s. I'd never raced them and sailed them a lot, but I'd never raced them as a helm. And we put a boat together. Des gave us those exact sails here at Howth. The night before the event, we went out sailing, and of course I knew Anthony O'Leary. He had antics, and he knew me, but he didn't know I was out sailing. I was in the toilet downstairs in the urinals. You might question where the story's going in a second, but and I heard him talking to someone else and go, "Who's that little Rumball child? How's he doing so well in the 70-20 on our first event?" So That was another highlight for me. So anyway, but it was another campaign where we worked with Des and worked with UK Sailmakers, and still do to this day on the 7020, same boat, even though it had a home. Anyhow, couple of other ones here, just some random shots thrown in. So this is us with the UK Sailmakers test sails. So we designed our own sails. The jib is built out of leftover material, being Enterprise Blue. So it was really great for me working with Des to actually design my own sails, build them myself, stitch them together, sew them together, get on the machine, build them, then go sailing with it and seeing the development that way. Which you might wonder why I'm saying this, but if anybody's planning, or children or youngsters are looking and going, you know, I want to become a professional sailor. You don't become a professional sailor just being a really good sailor. That's only a part of it. What makes you a professional sailor is if you approach a campaign with a skill set. Now, whether that skill set is electronics, hydraulics, or sail making, and the ability to repair sails, that's what will stick your head above up in getting selected for campaigns. So, and that was what I chose as my add-on to go into the professional sailing world. Here was Lynx, similar crack. That was actually our first time we ever sailed the boat. We did an ISOR race. It was howling windy. We came around out of Dundee and disappeared off down in, because Lynx at the time in the Figaro Circuit was the only boat that planed. So we just disappeared off the rising yacht. That was a great boat. Normal boat, which is still in. Anyway, time to move on. And then this year was when we got presented for everything we did in the Fastnet that year, 2 years later on Jedi. So Boydie presented me with the silverware. And then I can talk about the story later if there are questions. Of course, ironically, Boydie rang me a couple of weeks later and said, I'd like to charter you and your boat for the Round Ireland, with a shot at the Round Ireland. And then some of you will know we had a little minor incident off the southwest corner of Ireland. We sent somebody for a swim unintentionally, but we got him back and he presented me with another trophy a year later. But that was for a different thing. But we can come to that if anybody wants to ask questions on it. Happy to deviate. There. So anyway, as I say, these are just a few career highlights. One was actually just, we'll play this briefly if that's all right. It's just a brief. This was the Fastnet in Fastnet race on Jelly. Yeah.
Neat. What for?
What's the odds for it?
It's for?
Day one. That's the race 2017. And we're down. The Irish also saying the carbon. We've left it on. Just motoring down the river. Everything's on board. Set. On. Sails up. That hour to start. That way. 16 months.
Those that have got the house, it takes 4 days to get there. To get home in 2.
Miles to go.
We didn't actually know we'd done pretty well at that stage, but that was a phenomenal race. For those of you who haven't done the Fastnet, it's a brilliant race, but it's basically usually a beat all the way to the Fastnet.
Welcome to this episode of Adventures for No Sea Dog. Join me. This
We did a brief stint in Australia as well. But yeah, brilliant race for those of you that haven't done it. It's a fantastic race. And anyway, so then life moved on a bit. I actually, for a while, took a break from running programs. We did Jedi in 2018. We did around Ireland, and we did around Ireland, and Jedi was chartered down in Cork with me on as well. But I didn't actually do as much racing in 2018. And then, but you know, it's amazing where talks and connections and everything gets you. So, but I suppose prior to that, just to pare back just a little bit, which was one thing I feel very, very lucky about, was there was a number of years there prior to the Lynx and Jedi days. So Lynx was 2016, but there was a number of years before that where, you know, people ask, well, how do you get into this professional sailing world and do everything? I was actually doing a middle sea on X Factor, and I met, I'm sure a lot of you guys know him, Joachim Visser, who's the Schwedt doctor. Joachim said to me, we sailed together, and then he turned around to me and I said to him, I was just so keen and eager to go sailing. Like that's all I wanted to do. You know, I'd foregone a career in accountancy, nice steady job and all the rest of it, to just go sailing. I said to him, he could see how keen and eager I was. And he picked up the phone one day and he goes, will you come sailing? And I was like, yeah, no bother. And jumped on a plane, away I went. And then there was a number of years there where I just went from campaign to campaign to campaign to campaign. And just for the young guys who may or may not be interested in it, I've been in an incredibly fortunate situation. I absolutely know that, that I had flexibility with work. See if your dad's running the business. Where I could run off and I could do these campaigns, and it was amazing. But you know, you just had to seize those opportunities. You just had to grab them, and you just had to go. And don't get me wrong, there was ups and downs. Some of it was phenomenal. A lot of the sailing I did with Joachim, with a few videos have been lost, but we won't worry about that. Was we did sailing on these things called open 750s. I don't know if you've come across it, but it was my first taste of how bananas the French are. And an open 750, to put things into context, it's like a 1720 on steroids. It has a mainsail the same size as like a Cape 31, a wing mast, it's 7.5 meters long, this carbon bowsprit that's about 4 meters long. Everything's made of titanium, and with the jib down, cruising around before, and sorry, and a wing mast as well. Wing mast is a mast that rotates and actually gives you lift. And cruising around in between races, you'd be doing like 14 knots. Like they're nuts. Anyway, so you know, you've highlighted that sailing that, but then the flip side of it was, because you were the boy and you were the child and you were the, you know, the paid hand, you had to drive the boat places, and you know, you just spend a lot of time. I remember one stage, Joachim, phenomenal guy, all about the numbers of sailing, brilliant for that. And we were in, we'd just done like 4 months, or sorry, not 4 months, 4 weeks, basically one campaign to another. And we were sitting in the ferry port in Cannes in northern France, and it's 3 o'clock in the morning waiting to get onto the ferry. And Joachim starts talking to me about the rig setting numbers on the boat we had for the race we just did. And I turned around to him and was like, Joachim, I've done 4 weeks of sailing to Buddy. I was like, I know every number we've talked about. Can we just talk about something that's just not sailing? So you take the highs and lows of it. And that's one thing you've got to remember if people are looking to get into it. While I'm showing you a lot of the glamour side, there's a lot of the misery side as well. So just bear that in mind. Anyway, then I had an opportunity which kind of came up by chance. I got a phone call asking would I be available to be the driver of to be a helmsman Geronimo, which was one of the very first fast 40s, there was the very first economy 40. Then the fast 40 circuit at this stage had certainly died offshore. They were just racing fast 40s inshore, but Geronimo was a very strongly built boat. I flew across the UK and went into a campaign that was just phenomenal and gave me back the appetite for racing. We did some incredible races with this boat. This is actually up in Sandhamn in Sweden. We did a race called the Gotland Run, which where you start in city centre Stockholm, you sail out through the archipelago, which is just insane. So you start on this starting line that's maybe half a nautical mile wide, and you sail up through these channels. You come in and you're passing between two cliffs, and there's, because we're in a boat like this, a lot of the smaller, slower boats have gone before us, and you're coming in under the kite, and there's just a parking lot, and you're wondering how the boat's going to get through there. As you've got, like at the time, we had the Club Swan 50s bearing down on us. It was a phenomenal race, and then we came out through Sandhamn. In fact, it was one of the very first races for those of you that follow sailing. Ran the Fast 40, ran the ultra modern, had an electric engine in it, designed totally for the inshore races. The Swedish were quite interesting with the Gotland runs in that the safety rules, you know, for those who've done teach models with me, they just kind of took those and they just put them to one side and they'll stay over there. And like I remember coming out and there was a Far East 26, which is like a 26 foot day boat, and we were about to head down to around Scotland Island, and the weather forecast was horrendous, like really bad. And I remember it was dark, so it was through the night, and we were putting the second reef in the main on Geronimo, and on AIS you could see Rand had turned back. Just to give you an idea how bad the conditions were. Rand had turned back because they were pulling out of the race, but it's also why you shouldn't sail inshore boats offshore. And they didn't have, because they didn't need to an inshore boat, they didn't have a method of bailing the bilges from on deck. And that boat didn't have a companionway hatch that you'd have on most boats. So the only way was they had a big opening in the cockpit, which is how you got into the bottom of the boat. So what they had done was they were to do that, they'd open the hatch, they put two lads downstairs, then they'd have to seal them in there. It's 100% true story, to their fate, while they bailed out the inside of the boat using the internal bilge handles. And then, you know, when they needed a breather or needed some fresh air, they'd knock on it. And the guys just decided that was too dangerous, so they bugged out. It was incredible. And this boat was, Geronimo was amazing. We got around Gotland Island, and I remember the blast back where we had two electric bilge pumps in the forepeak running constantly. We hardwired them to the batteries. We had a fractional zero. Inside that we had a J3. Inside that we had the Genoa say sail on a full main. It blew between 30 and 38 knots the whole way back, and we did a 24-hour distance on the boat of I don't know even what the distance was, but all I remember was we took I know stacking is illegal. This was Sweden. We took everything, including the two owners, and we strapped them onto the port weather pulpit, ratcheted them in, and said, "Hold on, we'll be back in an hour." It was an amazing race. Anyways, phenomenal campaign with Geronimo. Really enjoyed it. We extended the bowsprit as well, so we made a few modifications. For a few, we put a massive masthead zero on the boat. Really good idea, which you should probably check with the structural engineers first, because that was on the dock in Plymouth after the Fastnet. Which is also quite another funny story, because we rounded the Fastnet, we were on the way back. For those of you who don't know, the heads on a fast 40 or a boat like that is in the bow, and very wet up there. I had the only way to use it was to get into the birthday suit, if you're following me here. So I was on the heads doing my business, and the next thing I heard this massive crack. So I sprinted up on deck through the hatch, and I was like, "What's the story?" And they were like, "You should probably know, have a look in the forepeak." And we had water, we had torn the bowsprit out of the boat, and we had water pouring in the bow. The seacocks, anything like, you know, softwood bungs, anything like that you had wouldn't work. So I fashioned the bung out of a depleted water bottle, hammered that in, and that got us home. Anyway, it was a phenomenal campaign, really great owners. lot of fun on the boat. I came to a little bit of an abrupt end after this incident, so that's kind of a very long story, but phenomenal campaign. Loads of young guys as well. So people were asking. One of the things with this boat was we the Rourke had just set up the under 30s, and most of our crew, I wasn't under 30 at the time, I don't think, but like 1, 2, 3, 4 of the crew were under 30, which was great on that boat. So yeah, it was Chrono was a great year, and then Chrono ended. I didn't really have any plans, and at the time, I remember it very well. Was there was all these murmurings about the double-handed mixed offshore coming into the games, and a number of people, I was down around the clubs, I was down around the marina. A number of people came up to me and they said, "We presume you'll be on the start line for this," and I said, "Geez, I don't know. I haven't even talked to anybody who I'd sail with." The next thing, Joan rings me, and she goes, "Are we going?" And I said, "What?" Joan had sailed with Figaro, and anyway, she got me out to France and thus started an incredible journey. So, just before I move on to the Figaro, so does anybody have any questions so far on the previous campaigns that I've glossed over?
Best offshore race.
Best offshore race. That I've done. Best offshore race. I wouldn't say there's a best offshore. There's been if you don't mind, there's been best moments. I would say the Sydney Hobarts, not just because they're in Sydney. They're a phenomenal race to do, mainly because the Bass Straits, where you can get and will get absolutely, if you get a southerly buster, you'll get hammered. In fact, in one of my early ones, you'll enjoy this. Some of the guys who've done Seaside, of course, will know the story. But one of the first ones I did, crew were seasick and blah blah. Anyway, and we needed to reduce the jib, so I was the nipper. So up I go, and clip on all the rest of it. I wear my life jacket and pull down the jib, and I put it back up. I put up the new one. And I came back. We were massive sea state. I was soaked through. And my life jacket, the internal lights of my life jacket had gone on. And Barry Hurley, who I'm sure some of you know, he was the skipper. And I was very young time. And I sat down behind Barry and he goes, "Dude, you're glowing." I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Why didn't your life jacket go off?" I said, "Yeah, the life jacket." Because when you're traveling, what I'd done was I'd unscrewed the CO2 canister and had it just hovering just above the thing. So I felt the life jacket and I was like, "Oh yeah, that's why." Anyway, so that was Sydney Hobarts are great. Best offshore race. Round Islands, for those who haven't done them, like Round Islands are phenomenal races. Really good race. I don't know, geez, good question, Teddy.
Caribbean 600.
Caribbean 600 is a damn good race. Yeah, really interesting tactically, navigation wise. A lot of reaching, consistent winds a lot of the time. Just trying to think. Probably, honestly, one of the best moments ever, though. Moments of races would be that round Gotland race. That was a phenomenal race. And actually, there's one or two races in the Figaro have been phenomenal as well. So yeah. Anybody? Any other questions on? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the last slide. That's the last slide. That's where I go around with my hat, ask you to put some money into it. Any other questions? Most challenging. Well, definitely the most challenging was the only time I've been slightly worried offshore, and I've been in some hairy stuff. There was some pretty hairy stuff in this Figaro thing, but it was definitely when we lost John off the southwest coast. Without a shadow of a doubt, a man overboard in the middle of the night in 30 odd knots of breeze off the southwest coast, pitch black. That that puts hairs in your chest and loses hairs up here. That was definitely very challenging, but I would have to say, you know, you guys have done courses, some of you have done courses with me, crew work, crew cohesion, and a team, you know, that was just phenomenal to see the teamwork there. So, but yeah, that was very challenging. Yeah, mentally afterwards, actually, we had a few incidents that year and the year before. Yeah, one of them actually started to tell a very brief story. So we had a year before that, we were in the deep sea, and one of the guys showed all the signs and symptoms of a heart attack, and we were 8 miles off Buckhead, and I said, Jesus, it's the last thing I need. So anyway, we did all the right things. We called in a medevac and etc. Anyway, we got the guy off the boat. That was fine. He went to hospital and he was declared okay. So that was absolutely fantastic. But he obviously couldn't continue on. I think it was the year of the Fastnet campaign. Anyway, we had a great season, as I said before. So we were having a big end of year dinner as one of the ISOR dinners. So I was getting everybody that sailed on the boat that year to come to this dinner, including this guy who had the heart attack. And well, I couldn't get through to him. His work mobile, his own mobile, his landline phone, his work landline, emails, he wasn't responding to anything. And I woke up a couple of times, no joke, in the middle of the night, sweating, and Jesus, I killed him. I've done it, I did it, finally, you know, that's the worst thing in the world that's happened here. And I was fully sweating about it. And tried contacting him. Anyway, the dinner happened. And then I was in Viking one day, chatting to Mara, and I don't know, ate some shite. And he walks in, and I looked up, and he goes, "How are you, Kenny?" And I looked back at him and said, "Jesus, I thought you were dead." And he said, "So did I." And I said, "Well, it doesn't make me feel any better." But anyways, that was yeah, he was okay, and he just he was in hospital at the time, but it wasn't my fault. Sorry, any other questions from Jedi Links, Chronomo, Fast 40s, any of those years? Surprise, the last question.
When you lost the guy off board.
Yeah,
how did you find him?
So how did we find him? Well, good you ask. Free sea survival course tonight for everybody in the audience. No, we were very lucky. So there was a couple of things that I suppose actually is very worthwhile to bring up. One was they had just brought in the AIS MOB devices, the little yellow ones. It was the first year, that round Ireland year. And as those of you that have been on the courses will hear me bleed on about, there is an inherent lack of knowledge around those devices. We had registered all of them to the boat, and you can set them in your life jacket to automatically activate. And we were all wearing spin lock life jackets. Yes, that is a plug. Johnny's there. That's that thing. So everyone's wearing spin lock life jackets with the device, and it was pre-rigged that it would automatically activate. So when he fell in the water, we actually had a digital fix on him. Second thing, spin lock do a loom on system for the life jackets, where instead of just a little light, like a kind of handle in the wind flying, the whole bladder of the life jacket's like a beacon. And it was when I mean it was a pitch black light, I mean like I couldn't see the front of the boat, it was that dark. But he, gone with his loom on life jacket, maybe I spin lock, was like a lighthouse, genuinely like a lighthouse. So I had a visual fix on him, and we had a digital fix the whole time, in which case it made it incredibly easy to see him. Yeah, and on that point, you know, for those of you that are, you know, thinking about offshore sailing and offshore campaigns, yeah, while a lot of the stuff I've done has been a bit loose, which would be a kind of an understatement. When it does come to the personal safety side of things, you know, invest in the gear, invest in the technology, because it will save your life. You know, it will save your life.
How did you go over?
How do you get overboard? Very good question as well. So we may or may not have had some sails on the weather side, because we were going to use them next, because you're allowed to do that in RC rules. Of course, not allowed to stack, you know. And we were all on the weather side because it was a miserable beat. And Boyd had basically said, a Joker got ahead of us. They were our big rival, and my brother was on Joker, so we really needed to beat them. So, but anyway, so Boyd had kind of given us a number of biscuits, and as Boyd would, he said, "Right, lads, you're on the rail the whole way up the west coast." So The crew were stacked up there, and John had just finished driving, and just by pure coincidence, I was taking over driving from him, and he left the wheel, and he went into the cockpit, and he was pulling his hat down, and he was pulling his collar up, and he was getting himself ready to go up on the rail. And excuse me, as he did that, as he stepped on a J109 from the cockpit floor to the seat to go up onto the rail, he had one hand on the winch. There's a coach roof winch, his foot up, and he was leaning forward with his tether to clip onto what should have been the jack line. But he grabbed what wasn't the jack line and was a sail tie. And then at the opportune moment, what happened? Big wave. And the wave kicked him up. Now, John's a big guy, I'm only a little fella. John's, up here. And it picked John up, the power of the ocean, and picked him up and shoved him out between the boom and the lower guardrails. Something like that. So it was we can look at it two ways. Like, he was wearing a 3-point tether. One advisory would have been that, or question was, why didn't he leave the long end of the tether tethered into the cockpit and get himself tethered onto the rail before he crossed up? But he didn't, and we will all be victims to that offshore racing. That's why we have 3-point tethers, but he didn't do that. Secondly is, which we didn't do after that in any of the boats I managed, apart from the Volvos, but we don't, and Figaro, we don't stack sails on the deck. So any storing appropriately. But we would put the sails down below. So it was he grabbed what he thought was a sail tie, but it was actually a jib sail tie. So so that was how he fell over. But it could happen to anybody. It could literally happen to anybody. Any other questions? Okay, yeah.
I heard you on the radio.
Yeah, it was.
It's finished very quickly.
It was finished very quickly, and we were very lucky. Honestly, we were lucky, but we were well trained, and we were lucky. We were well trained as a crew. Crew cohesion was brilliant, and when we reflected on it afterwards, we actually did the maneuver pretty much as textbook as you can do it. We made the call to the Coast Guard. We didn't delay on it. We gave a few talks about it after the incident, and John actually went out and talked to the Coast Guard, and we'd actually done it as textbook as you can do it. So but we still learned out of it. The one thing we learned out of it, I've been teaching man overboards for a long time. One thing we did learn out of it, is a top tip for anybody offshore sailors. When we came back to John on the first pass, we didn't get him on the first pass. We made contact with him. We didn't actually pull him out on the first pass. To look to race around Ireland, we were prepped to win and all the rest of it. So lads have been down polishing the boat like crazy. And so when we came to John in the water, what can you grab onto? Nothing. We had spinnaker sheets and stuff like that ready, but their spinnaker sheets are only 8 mil on a J109. Nothing to grab onto. So Boydie, fairness to him, said, get the tethers, because we had 3 crew downstairs, one Lord doing the radio and so on and so forth. So we got those loose tethers and we cow hitched them around the bottom of the stanchions, decked out from kind of midships back. So when we made contact with John on the next pass, there were 3 tethers, the tethers with the light and things they had dangling in the water, and you could grab onto one of those. And that's how we made initial contact with them on the way back. The second pass. We got him out. Any other questions? Great. Okay. I suppose then we look. So anyway, long story. I ended up out here. I'll try and keep this a very, very long story to the Figaro, so I'll try and keep it. I'll try and keep it brief. But I ended up doing this thing. Fast Figaro event. It's in the middle of COVID. A lot of things you shouldn't do. There you go. Nothing to do there. And had a ball, but also ate a lot, keeping it PG for the audience, a lot of humble pie. I went out to France thinking, I'm not a bad sailor, I've done a lot of offshore miles. I ate a lot of humble pie, a lot of them. So Anyway, it was an incredible experience. Feel free to ask some questions. I have a couple of videos in this, and I'll try and talk you through it. So maybe if we go to the next, sorry, just before I get on to this, I've come back and I still am sailing. I said I wouldn't. Anyway, those of you know the answer to that story already. But a lot of people ask me, which I'm just going to precede this story with, what's the difference between sailing in France and the culture out there and sailing in Ireland? The little video I'm just going to show you now, or I'm not going to show you, the internet is going to show you, is from my first solitaire. I just want you to look, and just bear in mind, this first solitaire was ran in the height of COVID in 2020. And I just want you to know the amount of, I'm just going to call them colours to start off with. So on the pontoon. So there should be a YouTube video for this here. It's the next slide on. Yeah. It's only a minute long and it goes really quickly. So so what happened was I went out to France with Joan in early 2019, pre-COVID, and we did some sailing on the boat on the Figaro. I never sailed the Figaro, had a clue, all the rest of it, had wings on the side of it, and then what happened was, give you the abbreviated version of the story. Then we came back after training one night. This is absolutely, honest to God, every moment of this is true. Marcus Hutchinson, who is from Howth, who you'll probably know, we're staying in the house with him, and we came in, and Marcus, as is customary for Marcus, had the BBC World News on. He goes, "We're talking about some virus thing in China." Don't know what it's all about. Was it? We had dinner. And then Joan turned around to me and she said, "Oh yeah, by the way, I'm pregnant, so I can't sail with you this year." And I went, "Well, that's an issue." So then I teamed up with Pam and to sail double-handed that year and go towards qualifying Ireland for the games. We flew home, got home, was home about a week. I was teaching a yacht master course, and that little thing that Marcus was talking about on BBC World News suddenly meant the world would shut down. The end. And we then kind of knew, without anybody having to say anything, that anything to do with the double-handed games was going to be cancelled, so on and so forth. And I was on the phone to Marcus one day and he goes, "Prove yourself." I was like, "Come again?" He goes, "Do the solitaire." Now, just to put things in perspective, right? The solitaire, the Figaro, we're 33-foot one design boats, and we did that year effectively 3 Fastnet races with a 3-day rest on land in between solo. That's what the solitaire, the Figaro is, right? We don't sleep. Then we don't sleep. And I never sailed solo offshore. I've done a few deliveries in Jeddah on my own, breaking the law, wild. And I was like, Marcus, you're having a laugh. He goes, "You're grand, you'll be fine." So I was like, okie dokie. So as soon as COVID lifted, well, actually, COVID actually didn't lift because there was no lockdown. But Joan's van was out in France, she was pregnant, blah, blah. I need to get a car out there because I decided, right, grand, I'll give it a lash. So I jumped in the car with my dad and we drove down to Rosslare and got the ferry to France, thinking we'll have all sorts of blocks and blockades and all the rest of it. There was nothing. We strolled into France. Bonjour, hello, how's it going? And sent my dad back on Jones van. But the key thing, there was no actual COVID blocks. Anyway, the plan was to bring the boat back to Ireland, learn how to sail in Ireland, and then go back out to France. So anyway, we went out to France, picked the boat up, never sailed the Figaro, put it in the water, 6 hours before delivery, all the things you don't do, I'm aware, yes. And turned around, came out of Port de Forêt, which is northwestern France, and sailed back to Ireland. Lovely calm sail until we got to the Bristol Channel, and then from the Bristol Channel we basically had a westerly gale the whole way up. Got absolutely hammered. Coming around Tusker, we're in the middle of COVID. The Irish Coast Guard gets on. It's like, hello, French boat. I was like, hello, how's it going? Where are you going? Ireland. Said nothing else but the radio down. Showed up in Dundee Harbour. Came in, French flag boat, French sail. We were absolutely wrecked. We'd been knocked down 3 or 4 times off Arklow. And when I say been knocked down, as in top of the mast in the water. And we got in, and the marina launch comes out. I remember it well. And with the loudspeaker goes, "This port is closed due to COVID." I looked up. Richard, would you ever four-letter word? And he said, "I can't even you." So anyway, thus we brought the boat back, did a bit of training. Anyway, then I went out, and as I said, I did a lot of sailing, but never sailed solo before. And I did my first solitaire, which was that one in 2020, with no training. I didn't line up against another boat until the first race, which was the solo Matricock. And I basically moved to France that year and sailed Figaros, and that was all I did. And I ate humble pie. I came, I didn't come last in the first race, came second last. And then but I proved to myself that I could do it, and with a bit of coaching, I could actually do this, and I could actually, sail solo offshore and be competitive. And I've never been so tired in my life, never been so challenged, but hooked, loved it, loved every second of it. Anyway, we'll move on. Who wouldn't mind then? I'm going to come back to that video. Sorry, I didn't realize it was there, so I'm going to come back to that one, if that's all right. I don't know if that one's actually loaded. We don't have that one. That's okay. We can move on. Anyway, one of the things you learn when you're doing this this solitaire stuff is you got to learn how to work on the boats as well. So I talked earlier about being a sailmaker. Not that I am anymore. So you have to learn how to work on the boat. So here, when you're not sailing, you're splicing. This is the mast at Figaro. We have to upgrade the masthead spinnaker block because as you put tap and die into carbon, which those of you will know when you've done that, if you get it wrong, it's quite expensive. It's not exactly a reversible process. So you learn all of these skills. My trusty van, my Vito, still around. That becomes your home, your life, your everything. You're traveling from location to location to location, from event to event to event. So you deliver the boat, someone drives the van, you drive the van. And like here, this is the diving gear, spare sail, sorry, the wrong logos on that. And your bike surfing gear. You meet unbelievable challenges, but one thing you see, and I just can't stress this enough, is the cohesion of France. If you are a solo sailor and you are sailing in the professional French leagues, you're sailing in either the class minis, the mini 650s, the Figaros, the class 40s, or the IMOCAs. So what had happened here was actually this year, we were delivering up to the Havre for the All-Mer Cup, and we were come by Roscoff. Huge amount of tide and no wind, and we were motoring, and it's a Figaro motors, it's miserable. And I was motoring along. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. I wasn't asleep, because we were so close to Ile de Basse to get out of the tide. And when I say we're so close, you're talking 0.1 of a mile off the rocks. That's what you do in Figaro land. And it was the middle of the night. I had the tablet open to see how close I was to the rocks. And the next thing, I was like, oh shit. No wind, loads of tide, and I'm stopped dead. And I was like, and I was being swept onto the rocks. I was like, Stat. So got the code 0 and unfurled it to pull myself away from the rocks. And I rang my buddies because I was training with Pole La Rochelle in France. The elite centres are called poles. So I was affiliated with Pole La Rochelle. And my buddies from Pole La Rochelle had left the day before me, and they were in Roscoff. So I rang them in the middle of the night. I was like, Alexi, you know, in French, I was like, I need help now. He's like, no problem, Kenny. Drops everything, goes down to Marina, robs a rib, because we didn't have one. Initially went around the ribs and was like, this one's got keys, away we go. Came out, found me, picked me up, and I had hit, I'd obviously kind of been a mooring or a fishing pot boy, but you know, like the sprit on an oppie? This is the sprit on an oppie, and I wrapped that around my prop shaft. I didn't know any of this at the time. It's the middle of the night, so we towed me into Roscoff. I came in, got sails down. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. I was like, well, there's nothing I can do about this now. Went to sleep, woke up in the morning and sauntered up to the marina, knackered all the time. I'm Irish, I figure a sailor, and I'm an idiot. And they looked at me and they went, no problem. And I was like, no, listen, found my propeller, and I think we need to take that boat out of the water. And I didn't need to say anything more. 2 lads came along, no problem, came down, they got onto the boat with me, got a rib beside me, drove me into the slings. The boat was lifted out of the water. The guy who was manning the yard instantly sees the problem. That's him giving me a hand. It's pissing rain. We had to get all sorts of tools because I've done the big one. And you know, I was in proper trouble. And sorted the whole problem, put the boat back in the water. They fed me, invited to a guy's house to stay the night, all the rest of it. And I said, guys, how much do I owe you? And they're like, here are figures. That was it. Unbelievable support, like just unbelievable support. Like, you know, I'm a foreigner. As you're known in France, you're an étranger, and the direct translation is you're an alien. But you know, phenomenal support. So, you know, incredible years. More of the skills. So, you did a lot of your own work just to keep the costs down. So this is redoing the fairing on the keel on my boat. Inside a carbon tube. Across the mast, and we do spreader work and all the rest of it. So the skills you pick up and you do and you work. And then I was very fortunate that actually to help me along the way, Marcus had, well, he had 4 boats effectively, well, 3 and plus 1. And I ended up just being doing all the work on all the boats. And he paid me for that. And that was how I funded a fair bit of my saving. And you know, I had some incredible moments. I learned so much from the sport and the Figaro family. And so we crossed the line. We didn't actually quite win. That's another story. And that's the Fastnet race double-handed. That was the Solo Matra Cup this year. This is the prize giving for the Solo Matra Cup. So you know, it was incredible. Anyway, so I suppose just to tie it back a little bit, this year. So I did 2020, got my ass handed to me, did a kind of half-assed double-handed season, if I'm honest, in 2021. Wasn't considering going back to it, and then I ran into Marcus at the boat show, the Met Trade Fair, sorry, at the end of 2021, and he said, "I presume you're coming out to show that you can actually do this properly." And I said, "You're a bollocks." And he said, "Excuse me, Facebook." And I went back out to France, and I said, "Right, I'm going to do it slightly differently." So we set up the academy. And we did a lot of coaching and did a lot of sailing, and proved to myself, not my solitary result this year was shocking. I was mentally in another place. I'd done too much sailing this year, but all my lead-up events, which was the deal with Marcus, the first event was the Solo Matra Cup. And if I placed 15th or better, I had to do the season. And where course did I finish? Freaking 15. So then I was committed to the season. But it was an incredible season. I can answer some bits on it in a moment. Just people often, you know, maybe don't grasp the concept. I just, as this little interlude here, and the reason I'm showing you this video is this is part of the academy that I did with Marcus, where we brought various people, and I brought them out racing with me, and they did some double-handed races and some academy races. And I just don't, just for those of you who haven't sailed maybe in France before, I don't think anybody really grasps how nuts the French are. as in you come around, you know, what could be a weather mark or a Latin island or whatever, it'll be blowing 35 knots. And if you're out in your IRC boat, you'd be like, oh, geez, you know, it'd be the S4 or something like that, or maybe the chicken shoot. On the Figaro, our sail wardrobe, very bad for sailmakers to make money, because our sail wardrobe is a mainsail, singular, a jib, singular, a storm jib, singular, which we never use, that just lives in the grab bag, a Jenniker, singular, which is Jenniker's cross between a code 0, as we know it in IRC terms, and an overlapping jib. One small kite called the putty speed, which we never use, and then the grand speed. And it'd be 35 knots, and the French would come around, up goes the big kite, and you hold on for dear life. And if you think I'm lying, right, I'm just going to play this video, because on the boat is a guy, Timothy, young guy, he's going to get into the Figaro at some stage. He came out and did a fair bit of sailing with me. Just to give you the concept, we're coming out of San Gio, which is about 10 nautical miles north of Lake Sablon, where the Bondi starts from. We're going out somewhere off Bordeaux. It's easterly breeze coming off the land. It's blowing 35-ish knots, and we of course have reduced the mainsail knot, and we've got the Jennifer up because we're quite beam reaching at 90 crew. And the hum you can hear is the foil. Did about 20 knots there, consistent. As young Tim has done a lot of sailing, and we brought him out, and like it's just to put the context in. It's not, and we don't just do that in like a short training race. We'll do that for legs at a time. Anyway, sorry. So that is where we're going. Yeah. So there's so much to talk about in the Figaro season. This is towards the end of the campaign this year. This is out of Royan, actually, to the south coast, and that's a mug shot of me in the Guy here, which proves I'm French if you're wearing Guy clothing. But just does anybody? I could talk so much about the Figaro, but I want to kind of. Does anybody have any questions specific? Well, not specifically. Any questions at all about the Figaro? Please ask me now, because yeah.
Do you like the generation?
Unbelievable. It's just the foil assisted boats are going to be the future. What you can do with the foils is just phenomenal. Like you couldn't do the sailing I just showed in the video there with a normal boat. You wouldn't have the riding moment. And the great thing is the faster we go, the more the foil works like an airplane wing, the more lift we get. So the speeds we're able to maintain is just like, and the faster you go, the more lift you get, the more pressure we put on the rig. So I think they're just a phenomenal. Upwind, they're miserable. It's like being on any 33-foot boat, but like that's why the French never sail upwind. If you look at them, they just follow the trade winds around the world. You know, it's simple, but phenomenal boats, absolutely phenomenal boats. Yeah. Any other questions? Please come on.
Any bikes to shred in the first year?
How many bikes have tried the first year? None. I'm glad to say I never shredded a bike on the Figaro ever. Never got a cut under the foil because we learned how to drop them properly. So I'm delighted to say we never shred them. And just to be clear, like that is a sizable rig. That's a big kite, and everything we do is on our own. It's solo. So we've got to put that up on our own, and we've got to take it down on our own. And we'll do that in 30+ knots of breeze. Any other questions?
How is it come in the race? You know, and obviously our school together.
Yeah. So Tom's a phenomenal guy. I have the world of respect for Tom. Tom's doing it right. Tom's moved to France. He lives in France. Ironically, Tom and I, we got pretty drunk together a few times. But Tom and I actually learned to sail together in sailing school when we were 6 and 7 years of age. And then he went off and moved to France. He's got an incredible backing of his sponsors. He's doing phenomenally. He just did the solo match cock there. He was last around Ile de Ré. He pulled up to finish 8th in the race. And we don't change places like that in Figaro. Usually you lock it in. It's very difficult to, because all the boats are identical. So it's very hard to progress back. But Tom is a phenomenal guy. We've crossed each other a few times on the course. The race just before the Solitaire last year, it was howling windy down towards Les Sables, and we both cross-jibed one another coming into one mark. And we were on the VHF to one another, and he goes, "I got in front," and I was like, "No, I got in front." I was on starboard, he was on port. It was the middle of the night, so we had to obey higher PCS and pass port to port. But Tom's a phenomenal guy. If you do get a chance to chat to him. But what's really great about Tom is, I came from the kind of standard Irish sailing background, offies and 420s and clubs and all the rest of it. Tom didn't. He moved to France, bought a Mini, learned how to sail it, and he's learned just by doing it the hard way. So phenomenal guy. Any other questions? Sorry, probably not on too long on the screen here. No, we're bored, Kenny. All right. If anybody wants to, there's loads of stories in the Figaro. Some of the stuff we've done is bananas. Sailing into the tight channels and shallow areas and looking at the bottom of the seabed through the camera rather than the depth gauge. It's anyway, it's been a phenomenal experience. I'm delighted to prove to myself that I could do it, and not to anybody else. Probably leave that video. I did, just the point being here is while I was doing the Figaro stuff, I did a lot of other sailing. I kind of gave up on work. Oh, we don't need to worry about that video. Yeah, it's me just being a child.
Did you know that your nose gets used to motors in your home? Yeah, you go.
I haven't grown up. It's no. So I still around sailing the whole time. And move on. I did a lot of other sailing as well. While I was in the Figaro, I just went back full-time sailing. I kind of checked out of work, which was great. So I did around Ireland this year. Boyd, he got me back to run Darkwood after the whole Jedi fiasco, and Boyd was was in the running for the car. So that was great. Phenomenal to go back and do that and win class for Boyd, so he could have his new car. So that was great crack this year. And then I did a lot of other sailing as well. So the RS21s, one Jay Sargent here at the front of the room. I came back in September and said, "Oh, I'm done with international competition. I'm done with it all. That's me finished." And then October, packed the car up as I had done all those years ago in the 420s, and drove to Croatia and sailed. There's a video here which is it's only 20 seconds long, so we had a great crack out there. It was actually great fun to go sailing with people again. Yeah, so that was just about crack. Racing was cancelled that day because we got downwind really fast, and then everybody's jib blew off their force day, so it's a clamber back anyway. And then as I said I'd never do it again, and then I got a phone call to go into the Caribbean 600 in January while I was actually in hospital getting surgery, and I said, I'm never going to stop this realistically, am I? So, but one of the things I developed out of the Figaro, last thing I'll probably say, was I say I don't sail by numbers, and I don't really feel how a boat goes, but I actually became, as it turns out, quite useful, as you do in the Figaro, on the nav. So I've now signed up to be a navigator on not Hyper, but a couple of other boats to do a few other races this year. So yeah, I said I wasn't going sailing anymore, and here I am running routings and doing a lot. I did a lot of that stuff last year. I did so much sailing last year, it's hard to grasp, but I actually would do routings for boats and remote log into their laptops and upload their routings for them. A lot of the Rourke guys in the Sunfast, I did that and developed as part of the sail design stuff, would have done their sail act files, their colors, sail settings, all that kind of stuff. So I kind of lie a bit, like thoroughly buried into a laptop. So yeah, and then there's your question. I don't know. All I can tell you was I might let a little bit of a cat out of the bag here, but I was on the dark way out on my telephone. I was in touch with a few Volvo guys about a Volvo Circuit, and I was shopping for Volvo 65s. Not me, I can't afford one. But someone has said to me there's a pocket of money here for a Volvo 65 for the academy to develop in Ireland to bring youth sailors offshore on big fast boats and give them the skills that they can go off. And this is now giving back to the next generation, because I'm getting too old for this stuff. So to get them sailing on the boat. So that may not happen, but that's hopefully what's next, is in time for the Fastnet this year. So that's it. If anybody has any questions at all, feel free to fire them at me. Otherwise, you're probably bored. You want to go home to tap mine.
Kenny, one thing that will something that retaining members, I think the ISS job, training a lot of early kind of young youths. Is there any advice or any kind of recipe, you know, that you've gone on to some really successful sailing? There's huge opportunities to the youth and adults to do what you're doing. But it's hard to get them engaged. Is there anything that you've learned along the way or from the school that you've
yeah, definitely to the youth guys, as I said before. Like, I didn't just sit at home on my sofa and write a lot of emails. I definitely suffer as somebody that know me, and I have from a young age. I definitely suffer from some kind of ADHD or something like that, because I never sat at home on my sofa just sending emails and Facebook messages hoping to get a ride on big boats. I turned up at events. As a lot of you know, I'm a bit loud, but I just went. When I was on a boat, I just gave it my all, especially when I went on to the big campaigns, and I made sure to talk to as many people as I could. I tried to keep my diary free, but saying that, one thing I want to be clear about is I never let anybody down. So if I committed to a campaign, I was committed. I never said, oh, I've got a better offer and I went to do something else. I think that commitment to the campaigns, you know, because skippers talk, boat owners talk. So and I think one of the big things is in this world, you know, I was actually thinking about it a little bit today, not, you know, this question is not preempted, but like when I was 18, 19, 20, 17 even, every cent that I made working in the school or fixing boats, and I remember at a young age, I was in the winter time, in Christmas time, I was fixing up other people's 420s that I would race against. So any money I made out of sailing was there as a pocket of money, because I didn't expect to be paid. That's one thing I've never expected. I've never walked onto a campaign and said, this is my rate. I'm happy to pay my own flights to get out. And it's not to get to the next gig, it's to do the race and then, you know, have that experience, then move on. So I suppose if you're serious about killing, which probably don't do what I do because you don't have a life, but is you know, I don't even want to think about how much money I would have pumped my own personal money into, which is the golden rule you're not supposed to do. So the young guys coming through, you just got to grab it and go and jump on a plane and just go and do it. Some gigs are miserable, some gigs are great, but they're all experience. And the more experience you have, the more people you meet, the more you get pulled on to the next gig. And, you know, dedicate yourself, as in commit to a campaign, do a good job and come home. And lastly, not to give it a plug, that's not what I didn't tell you, not good friends, but I didn't pray about this. One thing that is my project this year, caused me a fair bit of stress already. And you know, this isn't a haircut. You know, this is a lot longer in January. Has been the league, and the Irish Sailing League is it's not going to solve the problem of sailing of you know, young people sailing in Ireland, but the Sailing League is based off the International Sailing League Association, where I'm affiliated to it, or I'm not. The league is, it's a separate entity to me, but it's there, and you know, I can talk a lot more about it, but it's there, and it's shown internationally about. It really hits the 18 to 35-year-old age bracket. I'm 35, so I'm out. But it really hits that age bracket of getting youth teams from clubs competing against other. It breaks down a lot of barriers in that we supply the boats. It's not a small entry fee. I've no problem saying that. But that we supply the boats, we supply everything, so the sailors can come along and sail, and hopefully they'll maintain the love of sailing, because even my peers, Teddy and Marty and friends of mine, struggle to own boats. So I'm not saying it's going to solve it, but the league, I hope, will break down that 18 to 35-year-old bracket. I don't know though. Ask me that question in September or July the 17th to be more specific. Yeah. Any final questions? You might get a free hat. Okay, well look guys, thank you very much. Good evening, Marty.
Thanks very much.
No worries, no worries. Yeah,
That was fab.
yeah,
Some
thank
great
you.
stories. I'm sure there'll be loads more stories. And now,
Yeah.
bringing up by points.
Yeah.
Nice to name. Brian, do you want to say a few words just before we wrap up?
But I think everyone's already ready.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right, well, super. Listen, thanks a million, guys. It was really, really interesting. It was really good to listen to your experiences over time, and definitely all the tactical info around the sail trim. Thanks very much. So I guess we'll be done with a round of applause. Big thanks to UK Sales as well for